As we focus our hearts towards worship this morning, our scriptures remind us that God is constantly revealing to God's people about God's plan, about God's heart, about God's passion. And so as we focus our hearts towards worship this morning, I wonder what it is that God might show us, might show you. What area in life God is anxious to invade and transform. As we prepare our hearts this morning, I hope it's more than just a routine on Sunday morning, but I hope it's actually an experience that truly transforms your heart, that truly transforms your mind as we seek after the mind and the heart of Christ. Let us stand as we begin to worship together.
Today is UMW Sunday, and I would like to read for you the purpose of UMW. This is what we have in the front of our book. And as you all know, the women of the church are the important part of a church. And I would like to invite all of the UMW ladies to stand up as I read this, please. Go ahead, stand up. The purpose of United Methodist Women. The organized unit of the United Methodist Women shall be a community of women whose purpose is to know God and to experience freedom as whole persons through Jesus Christ, to develop a creative, supportive fellowship, and to expand concepts of mission through participation in the global ministries of the church. That is our purpose, and that's what we raised funds for, to give to the ministries of the Church of God. Thank you, ladies. Now let me tell you about this preacher that we've got today. We've got Trina Bose North with us today. I've never seen so much energy in a preacher. I tried to follow her around, and I'm moving slow. She is an ordained elder. She went to Candler School of Theology before Scott got there.
Well, before Scott worked there.
Before Scott worked there. So she had it all lined out for him when he got there. She has 2 children, a boy and a girl. Her husband's name is Justin. He is a doctor in Oklahoma City. And right now, Trina is on leave. She does not have a church right now. She will be getting one. We need to pray for her and to be placed in the right church. And ladies and gentlemen, we have Trina Bose North with us today. I am excited about the word that God has with us.
Our scripture lesson for this morning is from Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 5a, which is just to say I'm going to read the first sentence out of verse 5. It's called The Call of Abram. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you, I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Abram took his wife Sarai and his brother's son Lot and all the possessions they had gathered and all the persons whom they had acquired in Haran. And they set forth to go to the land of Canaan. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Well, first, I would like to just thank you all for allowing me to be with you on this Sunday morning. I'd like to give a thanks to everybody who made my coming easy, especially to the church staff and to Diana and all to the UMW. I'm especially pleased to be your UMW preacher for this morning. I feel like I have been immersed in UMW since the summer, really. I was a teacher at the School of Missions which is actually now being called Mission U. It's held at OCU in July. And the topic that I taught was the Roma. And I've got to tell you that when they called me and said, Trina, will you teach about the Roma people? I said yes, and then I looked up who they were. The Roma are kind of better known as the gypsies of the world, but they have chosen that they would like their name to be the Roma. So we will call them the Roma. The Roma people are the largest minority group in Europe, and they have endured about 1,000 years of discrimination, even to the point of extermination, especially during World War II under the Nazis. So, as I was doing my research on the Roma people, I made a serendipitous discovery. I learned that the Roma people actually migrated from India, which is where my father is from. So as I did my research, I felt like I was being introduced to a distant cousin. Allow me to give you just a brief history of who the Roma people are. Somewhere in between the years 600 and 1000 AD, millions of people fled India. Probably because India was in a time of unrest and instability. There was warring with the Mongols, and people were leaving, were hoping for that better life. And so they left. They walked all through Asia and arrived at the gates of Europe, in the Balkan area. And even by the 13th century, the Roma people were being identified as untrustworthy and as less than. By that 13th century, many countries in Europe were creating laws that said, you can't settle here. You will not take up residence or citizenship in our land. And so, the Roma people's history is one of perpetual motion. It's been like that for centuries for them. Even now, in this year, in 2013, France has evicted their Roma population. 8,000 people were dislocated from their homes, and their homes were bulldozed this year. It's really a sad history of a people who have been maltreated, who are powerless, who are often invisible, and who are rarely even talked about, except by groups like the United Methodist Women. Theirs is a story of continual walking, of searching for a home. Their story is really not unlike the story of Abram and Sarai, whom we will start calling Abraham and Sarah because that's what their friends call them. Abraham and Sarah were called by God to leave their home in Ur, which is now Iraq, and walk all the way over to Israel, the promised land. And scholars say that the path they took, they walked somewhere in between 800 and 900 miles. And they made it, or I should say they made it so close. They made it all the way down to Egypt. And then they left Egypt and came back up to the land of Canaan. They kind of like encircled Israel, but they never walked into the promised land. And so the Israelites, at that point when they died, they needed a new leader. And so at the beginning of Exodus, we hear the call story of Moses. And Moses was asked to lead these people to the promised land. And so all the way from Exodus to Deuteronomy, the Israelites wander in the wilderness. And then at the very end of Deuteronomy, the Israelites stand on a hill called Mount Nebo. And they can look out over the Jordan River into Israel, the promised land. And that, my friends, is where Moses dies. Abraham, Sarah, and Moses, all three of their lives were kept in perpetual motion. They walked in the wilderness for decades, searching for the land that God had promised. There are so many people in our world who walk in the wilderness, who are kept in that perpetual state of motion, who are searching for the land that God has promised. The Roma people are still searching for a home where they can rest with equality and opportunity. The Syrians are engrossed in a civil war where 100,000 people have chosen to leave this warring nation. Let me give you some perspective on that number. That's saying that one refugee leaves every 15 seconds. We live in a country where undocumented immigrants walk from Mexico and Central and South America to our land to struggle for work, shelter, medical care, and education. We live in a state where 8,000 children leave their homes and live in foster care. We know many families who are forced to walk away from their homes that are being foreclosed upon because of this recession. And we are surrounded by the homeless who are constantly walking with nowhere to go. There are so many people walking in the wilderness, kept in perpetual motion, searching for that land that God has promised. And maybe this is your journey right now. Maybe you feel like you are walking but never arriving, searching for that place of peace in your life. And if that is you, I want you to hear the promises in our text that God is with you. Those promises are made and fulfilled each and every day. And also know that I think it is the rest of our job to walk with you, to carry the load, to sweeten the days of the journey we share together. But I think that most of the rest of us are neither lost in the wilderness, nor are we binging on milk and honey in the promised land. We are somewhere in between. Our needs are met, and we can give thanks for the security we feel in our lives, yet our vision is blurring. Our feet have lost track of the path to God. We lack direction. We need passion. But I think that the direction and passion comes through serving others. It comes from walking with people who are in the wilderness. It comes from hearing their stories and understanding who they are and how they got to where they are. It's when we open our hearts that we are led back to the path of God's promises. You see, for us, ours is a journey within ourselves. It's a moving from inside of us to outside of us. It's not a journey from point A to point B. It's a journey from becoming self-centered to becoming other-centered. This, my friends, is the journey we are called to. This journey of letting go to all that holds us back from serving God's people. And if we dare to step out onto this path of service, we will find that we get closer to the land that God has promised. In our Bible lesson from this morning, Abraham was told that he will be blessed, but he will also bless others. Rick Warren, in his book, A Purpose-Driven Life, said, "We are healed to help others. We are blessed to be a blessing. We are saved to serve, not to sit around and wait for heaven." There's a story about a minister named Jim Klimbola, who was the pastor of a church in New York City. And he tells of an Easter Sunday morning when all had gone great in worship, and he was feeling that empty feeling of giving all he could to that worship. And so when the church was clearing out, he came to the front of the church and he sat down. And as he did, a man walked toward him and said, "Can I talk to you?" And Jim looked up at the man, who looked about 50. He was disheveled and he was filthy. And Jim said that many homeless people walk in and out of the church asking for money or whatever. And so in his head, he thought, what a way to end this Sunday. It's been a great Easter worship, and now here's a man who's going to ask for money for alcohol. But the man walked up, and Jim started to talk to him. Jim said, "What's your name?" The man said, "David." "How long have you been on the streets?" 6 years. "How old are you?" 32. The man's hair was matted. He was missing his front teeth. He had a glazed expression on his face. "Where did you sleep last night?" "An abandoned truck." And so Jim started to reach back for his wallet. And he was thinking in his head, how much cash does he have to give to this man? But the man put up a finger in front of Jim and said, "I don't want your money. I want this Jesus you were just talking about. I am not going to make it on the streets. I'm going to die here without Jesus." And for Jim, this was a moment where he got to see where his heart was. He got a clear picture of who he was. Jim was about to hand this man a few dollars to make him go away. He realized that he had lost his vision to see David the way God saw David. There was a shift within this minister's heart from placing himself first to placing the other first. And it's a step in the right direction. It's a step that gets him closer to the land that God has promised. This journey of stepping out beyond ourselves is a constant effort. It's a path of perpetual motion. And let me tell you, I think the journey is long, and the rest breaks are few and far between. But in the end, we reach a place where we touch God's peace and God's presence, and we rest in God's promises. My husband's grandmother was 96 years old when she died. She was a devout United Methodist. In fact, she was the church secretary at Pryor United Methodist Church for 32 years. I visited her in her last weeks of life, and one of the times that I was there, I said to her, "Grandma Alice, would you like for me to read the devotion from the upper room?" which she always kept to the side of her bed. And she agreed, and I read the daily devotion assigned to us. And it was about caring for one another, about going the extra mile for each other. And I thought to myself, what an ill-timed devotion. Truly, this woman understood this lesson. She had lived it out every day of her life, and now she's too sick to stand up on her own. Surely, this isn't the good news for her on this day. But what Grandma Alice said was how true it is for each of us every day. We are each called to a journey by God. We are called to follow this path of service to one another. We are called to bless as much as we are blessed. It's a journey of internal transformation where we learn and relearn how to love and respect each and every person we encounter, placing the other above ourselves. Each step we take out of love, care, compassion, kindness, and generosity is a step on the path that leads us to the land that God has promised, where we can rest in the promises made and fulfilled in Abraham and Sarah. In those last days with my husband's grandmother, she said one more thing to me before she died. She said, "God is doing all he can for me." After a lifetime of walking with others, Grandma Alice rested on the promises of God. Her journey was over, but she arrived in the land that God had promised. May our journey lead us to this land flowing of milk and honey. May it be so. Now, let us join together in the sending forth. Let our lives witness to Christ's love. Let your thoughts be of peace.
May your touch bring healing.
Let your actions count for justice.
We will be a sign of hope and a beacon of light in the darkness.
Go, and may God's blessings go with you.